Bradley Glenn Walker, otherwise known as Butch Walker, welcome to Life in Six Strings. Um, is that really your name, Bradley? If so, where did Butch come from?
Yeah, Bradley is a name that I was born with, and when I was moving to LA and I was in my hard rock band as a young teenager, 17-year-old, I was like, okay, Bradley sounds like a tennis player. Doesn't sound very rock and roll. And at the time, you got to consider this was the 80s, this was the late 80s. And so the late 80s was very much a sorry, I just have to have a guitar even if I'm not playing it.
Of course you do, because guitars give you they give you power, don't they? They make you feel more comfortable.
Yeah, you should see me trying to like sing without a guitar with holding a microphone. Like a, I feel as uncomfortable as a whore in church is what I feel like. I feel very uncomfortable. So, yeah, I'm sorry. I was saying my name. Yeah, so I had to, I had to get a more rock and roll name because there was no way I could go to L.A. where Guns N' Roses was kings of the world at the time and be a guy named Bradley in a world of axles and slashes.
Okay.
So yeah, so Butch is my dad's it was my late father's nickname. Is what he was called since he was a kid. So I became sort of little Butch, and then I guess I just became bigger Butch as I get older. So
That's like my brother. My dad is called Edward, and my brother's called Edward. So now they're Little Ed and Big Ed.
that's funny.
Not quite as cool being called Little Ed and Big Ed. It's yeah. But anyway, so you grew up in Georgia. Take me back to Little Butch and what it was like growing up there and kind of how music came into it. Like when did you decide that you wanted to do this for a career?
So my parents begrudgingly took me to see the rock band Kiss when I was 8 years old because I begged and pleaded for it to be that was like they were playing New Year's Eve and New Year's Eve, 2 nights at the Omni Arena in Atlanta. And this would have been literally my first concert ever. So at 8 years old, seeing Kiss at the height of their pompousness and over the top, like, grandiose stage show. It was the Love Gun album. So they were touring on an album, Kiss Alive 2 was the name of the record. And it changed my life. So I guess at that point at 8 years old, I knew exactly what I wanted to do with my life. I knew that there was no alternative. I wasn't going to play tennis and I wasn't going to I didn't think I could do anything else after that. So I made it my mission in life to learn how to play music and sing and write songs. And it all came in very incremental steps, sporadically throughout my life.
That is, your parents must have been seriously cool to take you to a Kiss show on New Year's Eve.
In hindsight, they're really cool. At the time they were just, to me, very just square, parents in the 70s that were very much like the parents on that 70s show. It was like my dad was just a grumpy, loud guy that, kids today just yelling at the sky about everything is what I felt like he was.
Yeah.
And most kids think that about their parents, even if their parents are not that way. I'm sure my son thinks I'm the same way.
Yeah.
Even though I think I'm the coolest fucking dad in the world. But that being said, at 8 years old, asking a guy who grew up in a mining town and didn't really get out much and was a country music fan and hated hard rock with a passion, I think, at the time, to take the whole family to see Kiss in 77, where it was just full of stoners and heshers and people smoking pot and passing it over my dad and my mom to other strangers. And it was wild because I didn't know what that was. I'd never even smelled or seen pot. I didn't even know what it was, So, and my parents probably knew what it was, but hated it. And So, you can just kind of imagine like that show All in the Family, that was what it was probably like, taking the family with just like my dad being this grumpy, I remember he got in a fight with a kid dressed as Gene Simmons because he was spilling his drink on the back of his brand new jacket that his mom had gotten him. And you think about it, my dad was way younger at that Kiss concert than I am now, which is super freaky to think about, that he was probably like, 40 years old, or maybe less. I mean, that's what's even weirder, is to think that my dad was still a kid, basically. But that set me on the path. And I think my parents were very cool in hindsight for doing that, because they didn't try to stop me. They didn't try to stop me. And I know they could have easily had like said, okay, if you live under this roof, you've got to do this and that and this and that. My dad was a hard worker, blue collar man. He never wanted to accept that his only son was going to be a loser musician.
Yeah.
Which at the time, I can't imagine it. Everybody had that perception of musicians, because it was a dark road to try to succeed in. And so I think they had patience and understanding, which was pretty cool, because it took me a long time to ever have any success at this. And success is relative. I still don't think I've gotten there yet, but at 8 years old till I was 18, that's 10 years of living under their roof and driving and having to work day jobs to support my music addiction, which was heavy. Like, I mean, those 10 years were the biggest, most, instrumental, in making me what I am. And I love the fact that they were cool about it. One thing I'll tell you that was pretty cool about my parents was, when I became a teenager that could drive, and I was in a band, all of a sudden I was never home except to go to school.
Yeah.
And I knew my parents' worth, where it was like, I can't just tell them to fuck off. I've got to, like, if I want to eat and I want a place to stay.
You were smart. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to need to like work hard in school and try to at least like not flunk in my grades, so that I don't get kicked to the curb with my music dreams by them. So, my dad on my 16th birthday, the first thing he said was like, okay, you can drive. Now you got to get a job. He's like, you need to go get a job. And I was like, oh, Dad, like I'm like the typical teenager. Who wants to work a job? Nobody does. I mean, music is not a job, right? It's like, it's fun. And it shouldn't be a job. But I had to go clean chicken guts at a fast food restaurant for like a week, and was like, okay, this sucks. I'm not doing this. And so I hit the pavement and went to a couple of music stores in Cartersville, which I think there was only two. And I went to this new music store, and I walked in and I said, do you guys need a teacher? And the guy was like, well, I mean, how old are you? And I said, I'm 16. And he goes, well, how do you know anything about teaching? And so I picked up a guitar and I started playing and talking, and he was very blown away with my ability already at 16. So he was like, you've got a job. So I worked at the music store, selling guitars as well as teaching about 20 students a week. And I did this all while playing 6 nights a week down in Atlanta, which was an hour away from my little podunk town. And I was living there. I was living in Cartersville, going to high school, and going to Atlanta every night after work to play in clubs 6 nights a week, playing heavy metal covers in a cover band. And I didn't think that was crazy. I thought that was living my best life. And I thought I was getting away with murder. I thought that I was getting up 2.5, 3 hours later with like eyeliner running down my face and my hair all matted up because I had long hair down to here and earrings and the whole thing. And so, waking up 3 hours later and going to high school and barely being able to get through the day and then do it all over again. I don't know how that didn't kill me, but it what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And I was so on fire like just passionately on fire, going like, okay, this is all great. And whenever I get out of high school, which is going to be, you know, in 2 more years, gross, I'm going to move to LA, and I'm going to take my band to LA. And so there was a mission, there was a path, there was a book that I followed, that I was writing along the way. And, you know, I tried to quit high school because I got impatient, because I was like, by my senior year, I was like, I want to go now. I want to go now. This town sucks. It's a deadbeat town. It's like the movie Footloose. Everybody here is Christian and super religious and super like, you know, conservative, and nobody wants to play rock and roll music except for me and like these 3 little, you know, heshers that I met that were a whole other town over. I had to go to a town 40 minutes away to find a band, because nobody in Cartersville, their parents either didn't allow them to listen to rock music unless it was Christian rock, or didn't let them play music, or they just weren't interested, because when you're not encouraged to do it and you're discouraged, then what do? Well, you go to sports or whatever. You go to whatever your parents tell you you're going to do. Yeah. So in hindsight, my parents were the coolest fucking people in the world, because they gave me that bargain where the bargaining chip was, if I could do all of this and I could work that job after school, I could go play clubs and come home and get up 3 hours later and go to school. But if my grades slipped at all of it was out the window. And so my dad was like, if you think you can do it and still, you know, pass without failing high school, good luck. And so I took that as a dare. And so I ended up graduating with all A's and B's, and was like, I don't know how I did it. I was miserable and tired.
Yeah, you must have been. Jesus. It's funny though, isn't it? There's something to be said about that kind of small town. Like when you're from, I'm from, it's a city, but it has that kind of, feeling of like small town. That I always had that as well, that feeling of wanting to escape to the big city and make it kind of thing. There's something to be said about that, I think, definitely. See, you're a bit of a bastard in a way, because you play guitar really well, you sing, you're an incredible producer, and you write amazing songs. So when was the point when you realized the power of the song, and kind of like, do you know what? I know I can play, I know I can sing, but what I need to do is write a killer song.
Yeah, well, I moved to LA. You know, as promised, I moved to LA at 18 years old in 1988 with this grand delusion that I was going to be a hot shot. I was just the guitar player in my band. So at the time, it was just, we had the pretty blonde haired front guy, you know, singer, and me on, you know, the dark, mysterious brunette on guitar. It was all the boxes you checked off when you were looking at like hair metal bands in the 80s. And it was like, and so when we moved to LA, I was like, oh, you know, I'm a fucking hot shot. Like at the time I was like really like super fast guitar player, lead guitar player, you know, dude. And I ended up getting out there thinking that I was going to be a big shot, and was humbled like the first week I was there when I realized that walking down every street corner was a guitar player that looked just like me and could play with their toes better than I could with my fingers. And we're all going to like Guitar Institute of Technology and going to school to like even get better and bigger. And
Eddie wannabes, basically.
All Eddie wannabes. And we were all like, everybody lived in the same, you know, big apartment buildings together. So our apartment building, which was probably about 30 units, and it was like 2 floors, very Melrose Place, or you know, looking, with the pool in the middle. And we had an apartment just like every other dude there, that with like 4 guys living in each 1-bedroom apartment. It was very much like a fraternity, but you know, less dickish, I guess. And every guy was like long hair, walking around, pacing around, just practicing and noodling on their like Jacksons and Charvels and Kramers and BC Riches and all these like, you know, shredder guitars. And I just was like, oh God, and is that me? Am I these guys? And of course, in my like weird not wanting to like not wanting to be part of the pack and wanting to stand out and whatever, I was just like immediately thinking, none of these guys know how to write a song at all. None of them. They're all just worried about scales and their dexterity and all that, which is great. I'm glad I learned it all early on. But when I started having that pertain to writing songs and coming up with, catchy melodies and choruses and lyrics that would eventually be good, I think, but like not at 18, but like definitely trying to like that was something that started to fascinate me a lot more than the actual prowess of being the best guitar player in the world. And also, we had a singer in the band, so I wasn't the singer, but I would consider myself the primary songwriter at the time. I certainly wasn't the only songwriter, but like I definitely had it was in my blood, because I cared a lot more about that stuff when I was coming up than the average bandmate, like where I would look on the back on the album and see who was credited as the producer, the engineer, the songwriter, especially, and be like, oh, well, that's not the name of the person in the band. That's some outside person. So that's when I started really getting obsessed with a whole other avenue in rock and roll, which was how all these things become a sum of the parts, and all of a sudden there's this song that hopefully is good.
Yeah. So this wasn't when you were in Marvelous 3, because that was a little bit later, wasn't it?
Later. That was later. That was late 90s.
Okay.
So the late 80s was a what we like to call hair metal bands.
Yeah.
Because that's what you did. And so we had a hair metal band called South Gang, and we got signed and got in with, and Speak of the Devil, we ended up getting in after getting this big record deal, which is probably one of the last big record deals for a hair metal band that there ever was, before that genre sort of got knifed in the side by, and alternative music and things that I eventually was interested in sponging up myself as well, because I was still growing as a not knowing who the hell I was and what am I, anybody that thinks they figured that shit out at 18, good luck. But I didn't. I just was a sponge, and I was taking it all in. And one thing that was cool is, I said Speak of the Devil because when we got in to make a record, our label suggested us getting in and having a co-writer on the songs. And I said, well, can we get Desmond Child? Because he was the guy I was fascinated with. I was obsessed with his writing, because at the time it was like, well, this guy's he's got his name on every big song on the charts by every one of us hair metal, bozos at the time.
And even Kiss, your heroes as well. He put their... Yeah.
Kiss, Alice Cooper, Bon Jovi, Aerosmith. I mean, the Aerosmith records were phenomenal. And I don't think those hits would have existed as on fire and as much to prove as they had to come back from the dead. Aerosmith, they needed the help of Desmond Child.
Yeah.
And that fascinated me, because I was a massive Aerosmith fan, as were everybody in my band. So we all agreed that if we could get that guy, it would be like winning the lottery. So we got him, and we co-wrote the entire first record with him, which meant nothing because that genre had already dried up and was dead before our album even came out, which was fine in hindsight. But at the same time, that school that I went to of songwriting, the school of Desmond Child, was like none other, and it was boot camp, and it was really incredible and insightful. And I still to this day feel like my songs and my writing has all of his little tricks and trades that he did in songs. And I told him that many years later when I finally was able to become friends again with him, because it ended poorly back then. When things didn't succeed, and we blamed everybody blamed each other and whatnot. And we didn't speak or even know how to even contact each other for a good decade or more, probably 15 years. And or probably 20. Good God, it was so long. But I just remember like almost 10 years ago running into him at an airport lounge, going to Nashville. Yeah. And what was weird, I walked into the lounge and I was sitting there getting something to drink next to this other guy. And I had this weird deja vu. I was like, God, I swear that looks exactly like the guy that used to answer the door every time we would go to Desmond's house to write that first record. And that's a random deja vu to have, because that guy easily couldn't look anything like he did 30 years ago. And I was like, God, it looks like that guy Curtis. And I don't ever do that. I'm terrible with names and everything. I mean, I forget everything. But he walked back over, and when he walked back over to a table, there was Desmond and two little boys. And he went on to marry Curtis, who was working with him at the time back then.
Wow.
And they had two beautiful boys with a surrogate, and with a surrogate mom. And I walked over and I was just like, Desmond, you're never going to remember me. I'm one of many artists you worked with back in the day, and we were probably very forgettable. I said, my name's Butch Walker. I was in a band called South Gang. We wrote our first record with you over at your house, and it changed my life. It made me a songwriter. And he like interrupted me, got up and hugged me and said, I've been following your career since day one. I'm so proud of you. And I just started crying. It makes me emotional to even talk about it, because the fact that he never gave up on me and was watching from afar, and that was very rewarding for me. And it felt really good to know that my childhood idol, had been considered me a proud study, and we've been, good friends ever since. So
that's an amazing story. So what was it that you learned from him? Like just a few tools for songwriting. What was it that what was, so great?
Well, one of the funniest things he said to me at the time, which wasn't funny at the time when we were writing that record, is I came in with this idea for a song, and it was like, I don't know what it was. It was just, I was not a songwriter yet, but I thought my shit didn't stink, just like every other kid. And so I come in and I play this idea and sing this idea, and the lyric has love in the title. And for whatever reason, Desmond just got out of the wrong side of bed that day, and he scowled at me, and he said, what do you know about love? You're not even a person yet. And and I was so like taken back that I was like, at the time, my little, dumb small town redneck self wanted to punch him in the face.
Yeah.
Then I was like, shit, he's completely right. I don't know shit about, I've never been in love. I've never been out of love. I've never been married or divorced or I don't know what love is. I know what sex is. I don't know what love is. So that's why all those songs he wrote were about sex, because they were all catering to like young people that didn't know what love was, but they learned love through their sexual, urges and tendencies and their,
yeah.
And so he was the master at like writing songs like that. And not that I ended up writing a career of songs about sex. I certainly was not the poster child for that afterwards. I leaned a lot sappier than that, or a lot more heady than that. But those things were really cool to me, that like he just would, even when he was like trying to like dig at me and be surly, he was being educational.
Yeah.
And I love that. I thought that was really cool. But like just his, the textbook tricks, of his, that where he would, all these things he would do with Aerosmith songs, where they would like do all these like, inner, what they call like inner rhyme schemes, which, where you take like, and it's in country music all the time now, like, where you just like take it's not just the last word of the line rhyming with the next line. It's like words within the line, like the first or like the second or third word would rhyme with the second or third word in the next line. And there was little tricks like that were really, that made the listener, it brought the listener in, because it was so catchy. Almost, it's why people love rap music so much. I feel like even if they don't relate to the subject matter, they like it just because they love the flow. They love lyrical flow. And that's something that is super important in engaging a listener. And so that's what made those lyrics so fun to listen to when you would hear like an Aerosmith song in the 80s, and so he was really good at all that, but he was also just really good at writing. He wrote from the heart, regardless if it was about sex or whatever. I mean, this was a gay man in the 80s who was when it was not widely accepted to be a gay man in rock, especially in heavy metal, which is even funnier, that he was writing songs for the most homophobic fucking audience and artists, where it was such a misogynistic lane. But he owned it. He owned that lane, and he owned those bands pretty much. I mean, a lot of artists owe their careers to that guy, to this like gay club kid from New York, who came up, writing songs, for some of the biggest artists ever.
Yeah, I know, it's insane, isn't it? So when you say that he used to write from the heart, when it comes to your writing, is that where you are? You're quite honest about, is it quite personal, or are you being inspired by other people's lives, like, I don't know, a friend's situation or something like that? How does it work for you?
Yeah, I think it's always honest, even if it's fiction. I write about, because if I wrote every song about myself, especially at 53, and I've written 1,000 songs, they would be a lot of boring songs because I'm not that interesting. But I write a lot about other people's situations and situations I know of that are other people's. And I try to make those as emotionally connectable as possible to people, because I feel like everybody's going through some shit. I'm going through some shit. And so to write songs that can connect to someone, even if they're not about your personal experience, but maybe you're actually writing something through a friend or a relative's perspective that other people are going through, I feel like that really is the key to connecting. Sometimes I listen to songs on the radio or on Spotify playlists or whatever, especially a lot of music that's considered cool, I guess. The cool bands that, indie rock or whatever indie means when they're on a major label now. That makes no sense to me. But like the title indie, which is so gross and overplayed, and it sounds so stupid because it's anything but indie. It's not independent. But it's become more of an aesthetic and a sound. It's a sound. And so when you hear like Tame Impala, it's like, that's indie rock. Okay. But like, I don't know if I connect with anything the guy is saying. Now, I'm not knocking his lyrics, but I don't know. I don't understand a single, I sound like an old man saying this, but it's just flooded in reverb and pretty melody, being sung, and it sounds amazing. And I listen to it all the time because I love the feeling it gives me, but I'm not connecting emotionally, lyrically at all. It's like Phoenix, another like indie rock band. I love listening to them. They're French. I don't know if they know what the fuck they're even saying, but like the lyrics to me sound kind of like Mad Libs. It's like just kind of like, this sings well. Let's put that in there. And by no means, again, that is not a diss or knocking on people's lyrical style. It takes a lot to be from another country and write in English as it is. So good on them from being from a non-English speaking country and like actually being able to like have hits in a country in English. I couldn't do it, vice versa. There's no way. But I think the one thing I have always gravitated towards, and this is where it gets me out of what I guess people would expect when, especially saying I grew up on hard rock and metal and all that. My idols are not hard rock and metal idols when it comes to songwriters. My idols are like storytellers and singer-songwriters and, Elvis Costello. Yeah, Elvis Costello, Billy Joel, Elton John, Bernie Taupin, of course, and Leonard Cohen and Bruce Springsteen and Tom Petty, and these are people that none of those people are hard rock or metal at all. But man, what do you do when the guitars and the drums aren't the loudest thing in the room? You're listening to the fucking lyrics. You're listening to the lyrics. You're listening to the singer. And it took me a long time as a young, like, metal kid to wake up and go like, what have I been missing? What have I been missing? I've been missing something, you know? Oh, it's lyrics. Oh, it's subject matter. It's like, it's emotions. And by the way, like I said, I mean, I probably cried, you know, I don't know if I cried, but I definitely can see people at an audience getting emotional to, you know, Living on a Prayer or whatever, you know, because, and of course, Desmond Child, you know, it's like there's an emotion attached to some of that music. And that was the music that I loved the most, was when the lyric was more emotional. And so, like I said, my idols over my maturation and my foray into adulthood became more sad dudes at a piano or with an acoustic guitar, which, you know,
you're just a grumpy old man now. That's what it is.
Yeah,
you're leaning more towards that rather than just a
less grumpy, more just emotional and sad old man. I'm just sad all the time because I'm so emotional about things now. And you do that. I remember my dad being such a hard living, hard partying, hard working, yelling, loud, angry. That was what I knew as my childhood for my dad. And then he just became, in his last like 20 years of his life, he cried when the wind blew. It was like everything made him cry. He was such a fucking softy. And he was so like, you know, emotional about people and like homeless people, and emotional about, you know, someone dying, and emotional about someone being sick, and emotional. I mean, it was all these things that I never would have seen in a million years when I was young. My dad lift that veil. And I love that. But I love that my dad got that raw before he died. And that's important, I think. And that's age, but it's also important to let that down. Otherwise, you do become a repressed old fuck, for sure.
Definitely. That's the same with my dad, though. He was exactly the same when I was a kid, like hard as nails, whatever. And now he's the same, cries over the most stupidest things ever. It's like it's laughable, but like I know
Beautiful.
Yeah, it is beautiful for sure. So I have to ask you, when we're talking about lyrics, Bed on Fire. That song, it's amazing. The lyrics, I just can't figure out what they're about. And the music video maybe confuses me a little bit more because it's so freaking dark. And it's clear that you are a huge metal fan, because I saw it and I was like, okay, obviously there's a huge nod to black metal there, like the kind of mayhem, makeup and stuff like that. But what is that song about? It's fantastic.
Thanks. Well, let's see. So that's so funny you said dark, because I saw somebody the other day like comment or something on a post of mine and said it had nothing to do with videos, with my music videos, but they just said your music videos are dark.
They are. They are actually.
And I love that was just somebody had to come in there to say that. But like, yeah, I love, because I love dark. I love darkness. I love emotion. Yeah. I don't want everything to have a pretty happy bow on it. And one of my favorite quotes is someone saying, and I actually saw it in a Peanuts you remember Peanuts, Snoopy and Charlie Brown? So like it was in a Peanuts cartoon, and it was just a picture of it was a picture of Lucy and then Schroeder. Schroeder was the piano player kid.
Okay.
And it was either Schroeder, I may be getting this wrong. It was either Schroeder or actually maybe it was Charlie Brown. I digress. What they were saying is I love beautiful melodies telling me terrible things.
Yes.
And I'm addicted to that. and I love that. I love that imagery. So a lot of my records are like, may sound pretty, and they may sound like major key, not dark and brooding minor key, stoic. They may sound happy and the melodies are very pretty, but there's a lot of fucked up shit being said in the lyrics sometimes, and that to me is just more interesting to write about.
Yeah.
Like I've never been really good at going, I love you, you love me, the end. It's like that doesn't resonate with me because love is more complicated than that. Oh. And so Bed on Fire, which is actually probably more on the nose for a dark song, because I ventured off into minor key territory for once, and it's a minor, which is like a very, very dark, mysterious chord,
Yeah.
And it was used in like metal ballads when I was growing up. And when I played it for Ryan Adams, who was producing my record at the time, which was a record called Afraid of Ghosts, most of the songs on the record were about my father, who had just left the building, and was like, it was all songs post-mortem for him that I'd written. That song in particular, I thought, as I was writing that record, I had that idea, and it came out a lot more sexual, and that's lyrically what it is. Gonna take you down over my knees, make that sound, make you see, untie your hair. I mean, that's dirty, and but it's real. And it's like, I think I kind of equated to, I'm going to put this song on the record as sort of like, this is like, I pictured my dad being that way. I don't like to picture my dad. I don't like to picture my dad and my mom that way, but I picture my dad like being obsessed, because he was a very obsessive, compulsive. He was very he was very determined. So I imagine when he pursued my mom, it was almost,
you're mine kind of thing.
Yeah, not a stalker, but like definitely like I want to make that person mine.
Yeah.
Reciprocally. But like, that being said, that's what the song is about. It's about admiration from afar. And it can, I guess in today's age of cancel culture, it could come off as creepy and stalkerish, but there was a time when you literally could sit in the wings and look over at somebody that you saw at the bus stop every day at the same time and go, oh my God, that's the hottest person I've ever seen. I don't have the balls to go up and talk to them, but here's a song about what it would be like if we did. And that's what that song is. It's a hypothetical, what a night would be like with me if you just knew who I even was. If you even knew who I fucking was. Because some people just look right through you. That's the second verse. You walk right past me every day, and leave you for dead, puddle of my sweat, you're standing in the water of my sins. And so it's all just kind of, it's imagery is all that is. But when I played it for Ryan, the first day, it was so funny, because the first thing he said was like, yes, metal ballad, I love it. Yes, he thought it sounded like an 80s like dark, like a Danzig ballad, which kind of did in a way. And it was very, because there was all these chords back then. When a metal band would play like a ballad, it would be it'd be like really mysterious, really, just with dissonance and like, ooh, intrigue and all that. So when I came in and I was going, and I was doing and singing it, he was like envisioning it being this like Danzig ballad,
okay.
like a dark, brooding metal ballad, and we're going to bring in dark Nordic strings, and we did, and that's exactly what the production on the record, which we don't play it like that live at all anymore, but the recording of it is definitely fun, like lightning in a bottle, I think.
Oh, I think it's amazing. And I just, like I said, I love the music video for it as well. And the whole, when you talk about the stalking thing, like, I think does the main character kill the woman because she's dead in the car and you take her to the party and dancing with her at the party? It's so fucked up.
The video. No. So
Yeah.
again, the video, a lot of times videos I do have no correlation to the song whatsoever.
Right.
That one in particular, the only nod and correlation is that, hence the black metal, with the corpse paint, those dudes versus a bunch of jocks at a bar. I don't know. It's like it's typical imagery of how I grew up dealing with in my society, in my small world of living in my microcosmic world of the losers in the long-haired losers versus the popular kids. It was sort of almost a West Side Story outsiders kind of a thing.
It's fantastic.
And that's what the imagery is all about. Plus, it was just an excuse to get all my biker buddies together and ride dirt bikes in the desert and make a video about it. So,
and then that kind of crazy debauch sort of party scene at the end where it's kind of all unraveling and stuff. It looked fun. You looked like you were having fun, which is good.
Yeah, it was fun. Yeah, me and my friend Magdalena, who directed it, got to make out at the end, which is really weird because her boyfriend was in the video watching us. It was funny and fun to us, and it was like she's such an amazing badass artist anyway. Like I always wanted to do something with her, not just make out, but
not just kiss.
No, but I always wanted to do something on a professional level with her, and so we did photos, videos, and just some really cool stuff together. But like that energy, getting in that group of people for that energy for that song was fun, because it could have easily have been a video that just would have, what do you do otherwise for a video like that? Make a love song video or make a performance video? It's like, that's lame. It's like, to me, those would have been so boring to watch.
No, it's great. It's great that you turn it into like a little mini film type thing. I think it's cool.
I love it. I love when people in the comments are like, what the fuck did I just watch? And I'm like, great.
Job
Great.
done. Yeah.
Why don't you sit and think about that for a minute, bro?